Great. Hello. Welcome. I'm excited to dive in. I said this in my email, but we're actually going to do our looking at student work in two parts. So today we'll mostly be focused on breaking down the standards, seeing the exemplar, really getting super normed on what our bar for excellence is, so that way you can grade and sort tonight, and we can come in tomorrow for action planning. Because this is our first one, I'm probably going to do some pausing for like, is this something that you've done before? How familiar does this sound? Just so I can get a sense of where we are, not in like a judgy way. Great. Did I already give you one of these? Great. So the first thing that we'll usually do is actually look at our growth from a previous standard that we've worked on in terms of like something that we've identified as a challenge in LISW and then action planned on, retaught, and reassessed. Because this is our first one, we don't have that, so I'd just love to hear since data day, like what are things that are going well?
We really just loved the jotting page. I think almost everyone used it today in like appropriately, like paragraph numbers, what it was, Jonathan King job it was related to, and then like a jot. I don't know like what the jots say yet, but it like looked good for like 90% of kids probably.
Great.
I think like it's easier for my kids. I actually noticed them going back to the jots, whereas it was harder for them to actually go back to the jots when they were writing their central idea before, even though they like ripped off the page and had it like next to as they were doing it. But yeah, I love it.
That's great.
Yeah, I think my kids were invested in the jotting page, even to a fault sometimes. I thought some of them were writing too many jots. And they also enjoyed being able to like rip it off and have the text side by side. Yeah, I mean, I think we're like getting a little bit better at investing in the question. I saw kids like, annotating the multiple choice question and needed some reminders to get going, but I think once they got into it, it was better than like on the IA.
Great. I think the things that I'm hearing that I'm writing down are more like the transferable things that led to the jotting pages being successful. So there was a really strong hype. Like, did they love it?
Loved it.
Good.
Mr. Wilcox, Ms. Travers, Ms. Kelly! It was like, we had like, couldn't even focus on what you were saying because we were all there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we had to watch it twice because the first time was just like
too exciting. Too exciting. That's funny. But really strong hype, and like kids do well when they know how to be organized is the other thing I'm hearing. So I think as we think about like what can we apply from what we do well, strong hype and helping kids know how to be organized are the two things I'm taking away as like we need to keep doing this and keep leveraging these skills. So that means that we get to go back into the standard that we're focusing on today, which is reading for informational text 2.2. So we looked at it on data day and started our unpacking. Billy, can you just read the standard for us?
Identify the main topic of a multi-paragraph text as well as focus of specific paragraphs within the text.
Great. Because this is the first time I'm going to like call my shot more often, I am going to have us like read the standard, read it out loud, break it down out loud, even though we've already done it, because one of the leader gaps I'm trying to close is not being standards based, and so I want us to like deeply know these. So even though we did this unpacking already, I also did a little bit more and put it up there, so I want us to just go through the know and the do, just like popcorning out. What do students, this will also be a good check if my shorthand is actually like decipherable. So popcorn out the know.
What a paragraph is, section of text, usually single theme.
Nonfiction text teaching.
Great.
And nonfiction text review. Is the main idea.
Topic, main idea that the paragraph or text is mostly about.
Your thesis, which is a statement that is to be proved by supporting details.
Great. Again, to call my shot, I added the topic and the thesis pieces after actually after doing this exemplar, which we'll talk about after, like why I went there when we get to the exemplar. Let's go to the do and just popcorn them out.
Sorry.
ID paragraph and label.
Synthesize ideas to generate topic.
Apply Johnny's thinking jobs.
Determine.
Do determine
Yeah, there
the
it
main
is.
topic.
Thank you.
Yep.
Identify thread through multi-paragraph to identify overall topic.
Pausing and thinking what was blank about.
Great. So now, based on the work that you saw, or like when you did your exemplar, is there anything else you would want to add? Actually, I'm going to ask a better question. For this question, which one of these up here, either the no's or the do's, do you feel like are the most important for students to have in order to have mastered responding to this
For
prompt?
the written response.
I think understanding that the opinion is the point of view, basically, of what the author wants us to get out of the text.
Great.
And I know, we're not going into misconception, sorry. The opinion, and understanding that that's the point of view.
Yes, okay, I was like, I know I had post-it notes. Great. So that this nonfiction text does have the point of view, and that's actually like the thing that they would need to know in order to master this. In terms of what they need to do, what on the do side are the things that students would have had to have in order to master this question?
They need to be able to pause and think whatever they just read about.
Yeah. So like, yes, they're gonna have to do all of these. What would we see the most evidence for in this, in our,
Identifying a thread?
Yeah.
Yeah.
yep. So, and then I would argue this one, but we know that the genre-based
Yeah.
thinking job is the point of view. There actually has to be evidence from multiple paragraphs in order for them to correctly identify the point of view for this text. So what I want us to do now is actually, we'll each take a turn to read our exemplar, and this is like a no judgment zone. But we're actually seeing, does our exemplar meet that bar? In terms of, does it actually show that we could identify the author's point of view by synthesizing multiple paragraphs to generate that opinion? Okay?
Yep.
Billy, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I'm just realizing that my exemplar is probably not the best, but
That's okay.
the author thinks global warming is a serious problem for people everywhere and our global community. The author claims that by burning fossil fuels, we release CO2 into the atmosphere, causing just a slight rise in global temperature, and this rise will cause problems like stronger storms, dried up croplands, and dying forests.
Great. And so you said that you felt like it wasn't that good. What part do you feel like your exemplar is missing?
I should have added that the author feels that we can fix
Yes.
global warming
Yes.
and how we can fix it.
That's, yes, why?
Because what I said was only one part of the author's perspective. So it's like two parts. Like, yes, it's bad, and this is why it's bad, but also this is what we can do about it.
Great. I agree, and I think that's actually, I'm getting all off script here. I agree, and I think that's probably the largest misconception that kids are gonna make as well. Do either of you feel like your exemplar had both those pieces? One of you go for it.
The author's opinion of global warming is that it's very dangerous and it's causing negative effects on our Earth. In the text, it stated that many areas of the Earth are warming up, which means that the land is drying out. Another example is that we need to focus on finding different fuels that will reverse the side effects of global warming. This shows us that global warming is dangerous and people need to take action now.
Great. I agree that your answer would be like a full point answer. I think the thing to pull out is it's almost like you had two claims, which is fine. Like, it's actually not about did you write 3 sentences in this order, it's about do you have all those ideas, and your first idea about it being dangerous was separate from your second idea around like we can do things to solve the problem, basically get different fossil fuels. Something to that effect? Great.
Here's the,
You wanna go?
sure.
Go for it.
The author thinks global warming is a serious issue. We need to find an alternative solution to. Global warming is damaging habitats, destroying farmlands, and clearing forests. It has many negative consequences, and if we don't find an alternative solution, then things will only get worse. This shows the author feels how dangerous and crucial global warming is.
Great. Yes, I think your thesis had both, and you were able to pull evidence from 2 sections of the text. My exemplar is here. I think it's along similar lines, and just you can take a quick second to read it over. I don't think any more revisions are needed beyond what's already been done. And if anything, I could have used neater handwriting. Okay, so what we would normally do if the quizzes were already graded would be to look at a student exemplar. I said if you have time to think about a student who normally writes an exemplar response to pull that out. Was anyone able to do that?
You can.
I can do it real quick.
Great.
Probably at the bottom.
Today
so
was,
it's done.
I don't know what was going on, but it was just like all time like love and Bryant for like quiz culture. That I don't know.
Well, I think that's also like we had a reading weekend and
Yeah.
they haven't sat down and taken a quiz since the IAs.
I need to do like some serious reteaching.
That's okay. That's okay, and it's good that you feel that. So I think we will have time to like talk on that a little bit before we leave. Was that, it's probably a 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a pretty good answer, but it's probably a 1.
Okay. What do you think, Rowan?
I think this is a 2. Can I read it
Yeah,
out loud?
yeah.
So the author's opinion of global warming is we need to cut short on fossil fuels because it is dangerous. The author stated that, sorry, she doesn't write fully. Dangerous. The author stated we put too much CO2 in our environment, and the author said it's going to cause stronger storms, and we need to cut back on the fossil fuels. The author also stated that we cause these big problems. This shows that the author's opinion of global warming is to be able to cut short on fossil fuels. I think she means cut back. But
Yeah. I'm actually going to go quickly reference the text. I think the thing that's holding me back from calling it a 2 is that the author's opinion is that we need to cut back on fossil fuels as being like their overall opinion, when that is one way we can we can use more energy. Yeah, I think it's very close. I think the actual opinion is that like we need to do things to solve global warming, and cutting back on fossil fuels is one of them. So like the sentiment of it is right, but she did not articulate fully the author's opinion. But that is one that would be very hard to give a 1, and I think it probably is.
it's a win. Okay.
What do you think?
I think they both are like, I don't know, maybe almost there. These are probably 2 of the highest. The author's opinion is that global warming is dangerous for the earth. I know because in the text it says that people keep on putting CO2 in the air, and that is dangerous for the earth and people. It also says that Earth's average temperature rises just a few degrees and causes problems. This supports my answer that it's dangerous and does bad things to Earth.
Yeah. So that's a 1. Why is it a 1?
Because it's not like it's dangerous and we need to do something.
It's a limited point of view.
And I feel like kind of uses the opposite. It just says that we need to do things.
Great. Can you read it? Because
Yeah.
her like Rowan's, that other piece could be somewhere else.
The author's opinion of global warming is that we need not to use a lot of fuel, and we can use power from another sun or wind instead. I know that because it says we need to cut way back on how much we burn and as soon as we can. It also says it will help a lot if instead of burning fuels, we start using more energy from the sun, wind, and waves. That shows that he thinks that we need to not use fuel, and instead we can use power from the sun and wind.
Great. What is it?
A 1.
Yeah. and that's okay, like, but we
Yeah.
know, so that way we can start to think about closing the gap. So in thinking about our exemplar and what we saw from a few students that would not be exemplar, if you go to the second page of your LASW note-taking tool.
No,
Okay, sorry.
Can I ask a question before we start doing that? When we're looking at like the actual rubric, it gives like the 3 possible claims that are meant to capture like the spirit of
Yep.
the answer. And with these ones, it's not getting at both of them.
So it is giving, like the first one, I think does. It's a problem and people need to stop it. The third one, I think does, because we need to find a way to stop it because it's causing many problems. I actually disagreed with the second one, and I don't think that that actually meets the standard.
Okay.
But I did have that, I did look at these and
that would be what I just said.
Right.
I said that one.
And so I guess, are like you asking in terms of being normed with the network,
Yeah.
if they're saying this is,
Because I'm all for like grading harder and pushing
Yeah.
our kids to that like high
Yeah.
bar, but then is that like a disadvantage for them? Because I don't want them to.
I don't think being held to a higher bar would ever be a disadvantage, and I wanna be clear, like, I'm actually perfectly comfortable not being number one in the network if it meant that we held them to the bar that is defined by the standard.
Yeah.
And if it helps to save face, I'll happily stand in front of the staff and say that.
No, I don't care. I just wanted to.
Yeah, but what I will do is I will ask Jessie about that, and get guidance, but when I read the middle one, I was like, does that make the standard?
Yeah.
And I
agree with the 2-part. I do. I just wanted to know what.
Yeah. So I'll get back to you on that, probably via text before the end of the day. All right, so let's look, and we're gonna actually make our rubric to sort the work, because we are so rooted in the standard now that we can hold them to the high bars.
The rooted is.
The rooted is.
More rooted.
Yeah.
So we're saying, how do we get it? How is the second one not a good thing?
It's only one part.
So the second claim, the author thinks that global warming is bad because it will cause many problems for the earth, is only getting at the spirit of global warming is dangerous as being the author's point of view. But the second piece of the author's point of view is, and people can make changes, or we can make changes to help stop global warming or to have a positive impact. And that, like, multiple sections of the text were addressing that, and that is completely left out in that claim. Does that make sense? And I think if we go back to the standard this is assessing is identifying the main topic of a multi-paragraph text. So they really should be using the information from all the paragraphs to
synthesize
yeah,
it
thank
all
you.
together. Yeah, because if you look at like your central idea, like mine, like my first point of view is like it's dangerous. My second point of view is like people need to make a change right now to find better energy.
Yep. And so it really should be putting those two things
those
together.
two together, synthesizing it together. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So now let's go through and make our rubric. So what would need to be true of a 2-point response for us?
Both parts of the point of view.
Great. And so for here, we're saying something about it being dangerous, or bad, harmful to the environment, all of those, and something about like we need a call to action, basically. What else would need to be true of a 2-point response?
Pieces of evidence from different types of attacks.
Great.
Is that 2 for them?
Yep. And the prompt called for 2 pieces, so 2 pieces from different sections. And I think like just even the push there is that the 2 pieces that they pull out have to support what they said in their claim. And that's getting a little bit at writing standards, but we should push for that.
And one evidence should be like that dangerous part, and the other evidence should be about the call to action.
Exactly. Like if they had the full claim and then 2 pieces of evidence about the danger, that would be a 1-point response because they're not proving both parts of their claim. Okay. So what would be a 1-point response?
Any one of those things that we're missing.
Yeah.
Part of the claim.
Right. I think if they have a limited perspective on the point of view, being just one of those pieces, and or their evidence is also limited in that it's not supporting both parts of the author's point of view.
And we would give them a 1 if it's just one piece of evidence as well, or is that gonna fall now in the 0 bucket?
With this standard, I would give that a 1. Like the prompt asked for 2 pieces of evidence, and this standard is dependent upon synthesizing multiple pieces of evidence. So if they're not doing that, then they aren't demonstrating mastery of the standard.
Oh no, I asked if it's a 0 or
Oh, I would give it a 1.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, so what would a 0 be? Let's go there.
Major
No,
misconception,
yeah, no,
like not,
Yeah, like it's an inaccurate claim. Or they,
What-
yeah.
If they just have a claim, is that a 1 still, you think, or?
I would give that a 1.
Okay.
Like, the purpose of this standard is to identify the main topic of right? And like, if they're able to do that in terms of the author's point of view, we're gonna give them a 1. There's no evidence that they could back it up. But yeah, a 0 would be like an inaccurate claim, like, global warming's cool because it's gonna be summer longer. Like, no, right? Like, you're wrong. It's a 0.
I was gonna say, you don't wanna read
not
mine,
like it's, they're like, it's, the author thinks it's interesting and then they talk about like the dangerous effects, but they don't outright say like it's dangerous or it's an interesting topic to teach about. So is that a 1 or is that a 0?
I'd give that a 0.
Okay.
I think we might need to put like important and interesting to bed in terms of author's point of view, and we can talk about that, but that's what I'm seeing on their work is like, it's always important, it's always interesting, and I think we just need to tell kids, yeah, they wouldn't write about it if it wasn't one of those 2 things, so we're actually gonna get beyond that, and that's now no longer the deeper meaning, their choice to write about those things. You good, Laura? Okay.
Even if they have like the evidence that it's like it is dangerous and it's causing these effects. So just no,
I
it's
feel
just
like
0.
there are kids who just like, who get it, they understand point of view, and there are kids who just don't. And it's just one or the other.
It might be something that we would teach after reaction plan tomorrow. You know, I haven't looked at them yet, but I think like, yes. And I don't think that's an isolated trend to you. And the point of this is that we're able to close that gap.
Great.
I want to get you out of here by 3:45 so you can like put your things away and pick up your class. So, what? Oh.
Am I making faces? I don't know.
You're making faces.
Okay,
I always make faces.
I know, me
that's
too.
why I do.
That's why I'm like, I don't know.
Great. So just in terms of readiness for tomorrow, the work needs to be graded with this rubric, and I need it by your lunchtime being done tomorrow, so I can do my synthesis. If you can sort it by 0, 1s, 2s.
For just that question, not the multiple choice.
For just that
Okay.
question.
I don't think I have a single 2 in my biology.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
That would have been fine.
Yeah, so it might be 0s and 1s, and that's an okay place for us to be right now. And then the second piece, Billy, I just like appreciate you and really want to agree with you that like the testing culture did not feel like what it has been and what it needs to be. And I think that especially when we have a harder text, which like, let's be real, I did it and I was like, oh, this is a little different than last week. We need to like have that culture for our kids. So if you can just do like 5 bullet points of what you would want to be true of your testing culture. I'm not sure we'll get to action planning on that tomorrow, but there's work that we can do with that. So grading, sorting, 5 bullets on testing culture.
I think, yeah, like I don't know, I can't speak to UNH or Ohio, but like Travers and her math quizzes are like superb. Like, and it might just because they like math more, it's more concrete, I don't know, but they don't do the things in math that they do in close reading, like behaviorally.
Come to Ohio, you'll just see it all the time for all the quizzes.
No, like I don't want, let's not sell ourselves short in this moment. I don't, like when we have hype and when we have like clear structures for kids, they thrive in that. So we're gonna take those bullets and we're gonna go there. Okay? Alrighty, thank you guys. See you tomorrow.
It's just
Okay. Part 2 of LASW. I want to first really thank you for your commitment to getting quality work done on time. Everything was here even well before when I asked for it in terms of the materials sorted, which gave me a lot of time to prep my stuff, so I appreciate it. We're gonna jump back in, and normally we'd actually just go into sorting because we already unpacked the standard and things like that. Because our co-teachers can join us today, can someone just share the standard that we're looking at and the keys for success that we were looking at for the question?
Standard, this is 2.2 RI, so reading informational text. Identify the main topic of multi-paragraph text as well as focus of specific paragraphs within the text.
And we said that the most important thing that they need to know to be successful is that they need to understand this is a non-fiction text that reveals the author's point of view, and that we need to apply the genre-based thinking jobs to determine the main topic, and then identify threads through multiple paragraphs to identify overall topic.
And so for this question to actually have demonstrated mastery of the standard, they had to identify both of the author's opinions about global warming, that it's dangerous and that we can do something to fix it. And so we actually we do have a student exemplar. I know when we looked through yesterday, we were like, no. So I'm just gonna read it quickly and then we're gonna go into sorting our sample. So this response says, the author's opinion of global warming is that it is dangerous and we can stop it. I know because in the text it says the Earth's average temperature is rising just a few degrees and it will cause big problems. It also says we need to find a way back on how much fossil fuels we are burning so we can help. That was Robbie. Go Robbie. Do we all agree that this is an exemplar, has all the pieces? Great. Is there anything that we feel like after reading that we would want to add to our CFS? Great. So we can actually just jump into sorting. I didn't realize how big of a group we were going to be. So what I did do is pull a sample, and I was originally thinking there'd be 3 of us and we could go through together. I pulled a sample that demonstrate the most common trend that I saw. When we're sorting, we're going to be sorting both by error and by misconception. So the error would be something that is a mistake that we see on their paper. And then the misconception would be like what in their thinking did not happen that led them to this error. And so I actually think the most helpful way to see their thinking is to look at their jots along with their answer. So what I'll actually do is just pass out, we'll work with a partner to analyze a subset. I'm actually going to go cross rooms, so you 2 will be together, and then we can be together. Can you just give us one more? I didn't do a very even distribution. And so you're looking through, thinking about what is the error on student work and what is the misconception that led to that. If you have a trend, pile them by that trend. Does that sound good? Okay, I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes.
We're looking at the question, that same question still, but there's
And that's just because I really do feel like the jobs represent their thinking. Yes, Ellie, thank you for clarifying that. Great, so what's the error?
that they include the other
So,
piece of their opinion.
she's
Great.
talking
So then we need
about
to
how
figure
it's
out what's the
bad, and that,
misconception.
it doesn't help the earth, which she's getting at one point as a point of view. But when looking back at her job,
They didn't understand that there were other ways to
they're not
stop.
actually
They
understanding
just know that it's like that.
the point of
But
view
there's
of the text.
other
So
solutions.
their error was actually in identifying the point of view because they did not jot anything about that piece of the point of view. So we'll just put Max in the, did not know how to identify all parts of point of view.
First, that kind of implies that it's Yeah, and this one's like pretty good
Yeah, so
actually.
that's just a fact, so there's no.
It's not pretty woman.
What was the?
She
I guess
said
is
like
that it's bad, the same thing.
this person said because it's dangerous.
We need to cut way
I
back,
think that's
yeah.
one part.
So,
Which is,
yeah.
Because then they go on, they go on to say that like you can
teaching
help.
them
would be the
actually
point of
having
view. So even then, I'd probably say he doesn't fully have the point of view articulated,
Doesn't, I just think it's like
and it's
slightly,
probably consistent, right? Great.
yeah. Yeah, I'm really clear.
So it can cause a big problem, so they're getting some like understanding that it's dangerous,
Earth is the best planet.
dangerous to our earth, but there's
I don't know, I
actually.
feel
Yeah, I mean, they didn't
It
really
might be, I'm gonna-
identify what maybe a thought about it, yeah.
Great.
Good one, it's a good example.
So that's time. I want you to take like 15 seconds to just, with your partner, crystallize what, if you had a trend and error, what was that error? So the error in scholar work was blank, and we're gonna fill in that sentence first. So what would you say?
So I think generally speaking, it's gonna be, the error is gonna be that they didn't identify
the point of
one
view
part of the
is
thing.
that
Point of view or all parts of
That's like what I saw in my class.
that we need to
Most
pay
people actually
attention.
identified it because it's bad, but they weren't willing to say like the author also thinks that we can do something about it.
Great. Let's come back together, and we're all gonna share out to see how aligned we are. Laura, you wanna start?
Yeah, our error was that they weren't able to identify a point of view or all parts of
Yeah.
in their jobs or their.
In their written response, they did not have both parts of the point of view.
So we said that our trend was that they are not correctly identifying the point of view.
We only got to two, we should have been moving quicker, but I think I can confidently say that the misconception from Brian is that they didn't correctly identify the point of view, or they only got one part of it.
Great. So to like really, and I think my questioning was bad, so I'm gonna own that, to really crystallize the difference between error and misconception. The error on student work is that they had a limited claim about the author's point of view. The misconception, which I think is what we're talking about when we saw with the JOTS, is that they did not know how to identify the author's point of view throughout the text. And so most of the jotting pages had one piece of the point of view, but not both. And so the misconception is around identifying point of view. The error is how that showed up in their written response. So on page, no page numbers, but on page 3, there's a place for you to write down, like, what is our student gap? So that way we can really punch it.
Oh, no. So that, I'm already like forgetting.
That's
So it's
okay.
a limited claim
Oh,
because
right,
they're
okay,
not
now.
identifying the point of view through multiple parts of the text.
And because this is our first time doing this, I'm gonna ground us back in the standard. So if we looked at the 3 key areas that we talked about yesterday, on the do side, the error is that they were not able to identify the thread and point of view throughout multiple paragraphs, because on the no side, they did not really know how to identify point of view in the text. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Great. So now we actually get to like action planning, which is a lot of fun. And this is where I'm gonna ask again, have you done this before? Have you gone through the different like potential reteach types with DSAB? Great. So if you look on the board, there's 2 types of reteach that can be effective when reteaching a lost skill. Both have pros, both have cons. The first one is modeling, and the second is guided discourse. And so part of our teacher action step is gonna be to do one of these things. So take a second to read over kind of like what the steps of each of those things are, and then we'll talk about which one we should do and what that reteach should be focused on. Okay. Which reteach type do you think we should leverage in response to this standard, and why?
I think we should do the modeling.
Why?
Because it's so like abstract that you need to model like what is going through your mind,
Yeah.
right? And then you just tell them like, when I read this, I think A, B, and C or something.
Yeah, I agree. I also think we were at about 3% mastery on this standard, and therefore the guided discourse will probably not actually leverage the key points because the majority of our students aren't there. So now we have to think about, we're modeling, we need to zoom in on like the gap that the students have. And so what I want you to think about right now, and we'll actually turn and talk, you guys can do a group of 3, what would be the key area to focus our reteach on, both the what and the how. So students need to learn how to do what by blank blank. Turn and talk.
They need to learn identify what the point of view is.
So I think
And the
the
text
what
by-
is identifying the 2 different point of views, and the how is being able to go back and
Can
then
you
take
identify
pieces
what
of
the point of view
information
is?
from
Great, that's the what.
from the
By.
paragraphs.
How do we identify the author's point of view?
That's what I don't really like know how I know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I almost,
What did I do?
So I think it's like pulling out the key words
Yeah.
that are making that
I
are
think
like
they need
really
to ask
confusing
themselves,
words.
But I like,
what,
And I think
what
that's
information,
where I like
what is the
Yeah.
information to read, and like, why is the author presenting them with that information? And I don't know if a kid friendly language is for that, but it's like,
Alright, let's come back whole group, and I'm gonna chart like this, the scholar action steps, that way we can use it when we plan our reteach. What do scholars need to focus on?
Focusing on identifying the 2 parts of the point of view.
Billy, do you agree?
well, I just said what the author's point of view is, but
Why did you
in
say
this-
that instead of the 2 parts of the point of view?
just because there always isn't 2 parts.
Yeah, I think there could be 3 parts, there could be 4 parts. I think that's like the procedural for this, and that we're gonna have to show them that too. And the transferable is that they will identify the author's point of view. What do they need by? Great. What do they need to do to identify the author's point of view first?
I would say as they're reading, they would just ask themselves, like, is this factual or is it like the author's feeling? So
Great.
to distinguish.
So they need, I'm hearing you say they need to read the text, right? And probably like a section of the text.
that's our first gap in Ohio.
Is what?
Reading the text.
Great.
Mm.
Sounds so simple.
So they just go straight to the question and then.
No.
No, it's like the act of reading.
They just
We are-
don't want to.
We are not,
We're not
no,
fully
we're just not
focused.
great readers, yeah.
So we're gonna read the section of the text. And then I think you're getting at an idea when you're saying like, is this factual or is this, but what's actually like the self-monitoring that students need to do when they're reading the text in order to say, oh,
Stop them.
I think they need to, well, they need to ask themselves, like, why is this important to the, like, why is the author going out of his or her way to write this?
Yeah.
Essentially, like, because like you said the other day, it's important, like, yeah, that's a given. Like, there's
Right.
a reason why this author took the time to write this down and to share this information.
So what language should we use around point of view that would get beyond it's just important? Like I think when we say why did the author write this, they're gonna say because it's important. But what is actually the point of view? Do we have a common definition of point of view?
It's how the author thinks and feels about a topic.
Great. Thinks/feels. The language that I have used, so this is helpful that we didn't have a common language, but I think aligns here is opinion.
Right. I use that interchangeably.
Or belief. Yeah, so I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Ask myself, what does this tell me about the author's opinion or belief, or the author's thoughts or feelings about blank? And then I guess there's probably a piece of then jotting that. Great. Yes, no, almost there. Does this feel right?
I think that there needs to be a part about throughout the entire text. I know you said like read section of the text, but if we're talking about the standard about how they need to synthesize it through the whole text, it's
Great.
more than just a section.
Great, so
I just don't know where it would fit in.
like read each section of the text?
Yeah.
Read each section of the text, ask myself, what does this tell me about the author's opinion or beliefs about the topic? Jot it. Great. So we need to plan a model that closes this gap for our kids. I'm gonna pass out paper for you to plan your model. I wrote down some things that I think are helpful when planning a model, which are the materials, your think about it question. So what are you going to ask students to think about while you are modeling that would help them elicit the key points, the actual like steps of your think aloud, and the stamp it question, what are you going to ask students, so that way those key points are stamped for the class. I'll leave this here. Let's take 4 minutes to plan, and then we're actually going to jump up and practice, because we'll use this in our reteach tomorrow. And I think we will use the same text, because we know that this text has multiple pieces. I know this is our first time doing this, so do we have questions?
It's a little off topic, but I feel like tomorrow might be a little like
Not
crunch time,
reteach available.
because we have that thing from 11:30 to the end of the day.
Okay, I'll look at the schedule for tomorrow. Let's plan it, because we do need to close this gap tomorrow. Okay, let's jump into planning. I can get this.
Some materials will just need to have the question printed out. And they need to have their quiz. So I think about questions are what
Yes,
we
yes.
really, so like, also doing the listening test, like, what is, like, what,
Yes. Could we ask you a question?
yeah, I'd be like, what questions
We are stuck.
am I asking myself?
You correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like we do this all day. This is what I do because they can't read and they can't think by themselves. So I'm constantly modeling, and I don't think that there needs to be more than just me.
As I
You know what I mean?
stop.
Like the me thinking and saying it. Like I don't know how else.
Right, so even if you do read it out loud to them, they still can't get to step number two.
It's like I'm stopping
As I
and
stop
asking
and
myself how, and like constantly like, oh, I heard that.
Yeah, so that's where the modeling is.
Does that
So
make
this
sense?
is like what we're having them think about as
Like
we
I
model.
plan one and I'm gonna model it.
No,
I
that's
think the
modeling.
step
This
that
is what the kids have to
isn't
think
like
as I model.
intrinsically listed on here is a
Right, but you have to give them a thinking question as
visual
you model.
marker
So it's
for
like,
opinions
great,
and beliefs.
as I'm modeling, think about what questions am I
In
asking
terms of,
myself
like,
as I stop and
When I'm
think.
thinking about what does this tell me about the author's
Yeah.
opinions or beliefs, is it a positive opinion of me? Is it a negative opinion of me? Or do they think I should do something? But I think that is like an extra scaffold.
Yes.
And then I think
I
like
think that, yeah, I do think that's part of the
after-
It's interesting because we don't know anything else to say.
I just like it's hard to give more than one with like the kids because if you
Right.
give them
Yes.
more than one question,
And I
they're
put
not
them on
gonna
here,
like,
but I
you
thought about
know what I mean? They're gonna forget about it.
So we need a
Where are you at?
So think aloud.
Just trying to figure, I don't know, like, the,
Okay.
what we're just saying, if you say, if you give this the, that's a thinking job,
Think about it.
like, you need to really make sure that the questions you ask yourself, you only ask like maybe 2 or 3
Yeah.
before you complete this.
And I think it's this piece of varying your cadence to highlight the thinking.
Mhm.
And so I think you can do that through like the cadence of your tone or your body. Like you can actually step away from what you're working on, like point to your brain and be like, I'm thinking about.
Just all dependent on.
But yes, I agree. Like there has to be a teacher move
This-
that highlights this is what you need to pull out.
Mhm.
Great.
If it's an opinion. Great. I
So like, if I'm
know.
gonna read, if I'm gonna do a read teaching, I'm gonna read paragraph 4
Yes.
and paragraph,
Feels.
I'm gonna do that paragraph 4, 5, and 6.
Or if it's-
So you're thinking
Yes.
about, this is
Then I
their
like,
listening, this is what they're listening for as I.
try to limit their thinking job.
Yeah, but we need to do the field first,
Call it
and
2,
then
like,
this is
Yeah.
their
Point
point
how
of
do
view.
I
Yeah.
get
You're listening for what
You know how I
I
use
think
a
about
point of view and
to help me
opinion
identify
Right.
So they
the
know
author's
that I
point
see
of view
opinion.
in multiple
It's the same thing as
sections of
point
the
of view.
text. Then there's a check for understanding what are you thinking about?
Or like.
No, so
Right
this
here.
is
Does that
what
sound
I'm
right?
to, so I'm just, this is me
Yeah, I'm
just
just like,
jotting it down.
mhm.
So like,
So
I
it's
would
like, what
obviously
questions
know,
am I
like
asking
paragraph
myself
3 is
to-
an opinion. So I'd stop,
to do
oh,
what?
I know this
To
is an
identify the
opinion
author's point of view.
because the author
Yeah, that's your
feels.
think about it.
Basically, like, they know now that it's dangerous for the environment because it's cleaning up. Yeah, people have known for years that it's going to cause pollution. I know that's dangerous. I know that's the author's opinion because of that feeling word, like, of it being dangerous. Something like that. So I guess the specific question would be like, about, what does this tell me?
You're listening to that. Am I paying close attention to?
About the author's opinion, basically number 2, that would
About
be
what
it.
that word's like dangerous. Or do I say that?
Great. I'm gonna actually pause us. Because it's the first time, I won't always model what I think the reteach could look like, but I will model for today. And if that makes you think of anything else in your planning, you'll have like a minute to go back and adjust, and then we're actually gonna like pop up in practice, so we're ready to go. Billy, I really appreciated that you said like, I'm actually only going to read paragraphs 4, 5, and 6, because that's actually where the author's point of view is revealed. And so I'm not going to reread this whole section. I agree, and that's where I would start. So you're gonna be my class. I would bring you to the rug, like I don't want you at your desks. You don't need any of your materials at this time. Action. Hands are folded, sitting up tall, eyes are on me. Marissa's eyes are on me, Billy's hands are folded. Friends, I'm excited because I actually saw a mistake on a lot of our work, but I get excited because I get to do work with you that helps us fix our mistakes and grow our brains. If you're excited too, you can show me a little sign excited. Laura's excited, both those hands. Before I show you about the mistake, I actually want to teach you about opinions and beliefs. About opinions and
Beliefs.
Leroy said it right after my snap. Opinions and beliefs are what we think or feel about something. And I know you know that that's what the point of it is. Track my poster. When you have an opinion or a belief, or you think or feel something about a topic, it could be positive, it could be
Positive.
it could be negative, it could be
Negative.
or it could be asking me to do something. It could be
Asking me to do something.
good. An example of a positive feeling is like, I feel positive about team building. I think it's the best time of the day. I could feel negative about something like, I think the boys' bathroom is disgusting. I feel negative about the boys' bathroom. Or I could feel called to action about something that's important to me. Like, I think I need to start exercising to be a little bit healthier. That's my opinion. I need to start exercising. You're gonna get to use these fun words about opinions or beliefs when we close our gap today. Keep watching me. I bet you remember this fun read. I'm actually going to reread the text because I noticed that you made a mistake in identifying the characters, the author's point of view. When I say go, turtles up, what was the mistake you made last week? Go. Good, Rowan's hand is up. Track Rowan.
The mistake that we made was we were not identifying the point of view.
Track me. I know that Rowan's going to do it better this time because she's able to say what she's working on. While I'm reading the text, I want you to think about what steps do I take to identify the characters. Miss Reinhardt, thank you for all the love, all those hands. The author's point of view. I'm going to say it one more time because I got tricked. You're going to think about what steps do I take to identify the author's point of view. What are you thinking about, Billy?
What steps you take to identify the author's point of view?
Great, I'm so ready. How big a deal is it? Global warming may sound nice and cozy. Oh, that sounds positive. Especially if you live in a cold place. But it's not, but nice it's not. I just read, but nice it's not, and that makes me think that the author's opinion or belief is negative. He might think it's bad because he says, nice it's not. Let me keep reading. If the Earth's average temperature rises just a few degrees, it'll cause big problems. Whoa, I know big problems is negative, which makes me think that the author has a negative opinion about global warming. I thought, what did this text tell me about the author's opinion or belief? Let me try it in another section. What's the solution? Like under the dot cam. We need to cut way back on how much fossil fuels we burn as soon as we can. Whoa. We need to cut way back on fossil fuels as soon as we can. The author's telling me to do something. That sounds like a call to action. It sounds like he's telling me to stop using fossil fuels. I read that and I thought about what that told me about his opinion or belief, and it sounded like a call to action. It will help a lot if instead of burning fossil fuels, we start using more energy from the sun, wind, and waves. And we need to find even better kinds of energy to use. I read that section and it still makes me think that the author's opinion is that I need to do something to stop using so many fossil fuels to stop global warming. Friends, when I say go, turn and talk, what were the things that I thought about while I was reading to identify the author's point of view? Go.
So, yeah. And then
Oh, hands Hands folded. Track Marissa.
So she was thinking about the words that the author used to help us figure out what he's feeling about the topic. If they were positive or negative words, or a call to action.
That's exactly right. I can use what the author says to figure out what their opinion or belief is all the time. You're going to get to do that when you go back to your seats. When you go back to your seats, you are going to read paragraph 6 and jot the author's point of view using these steps. What are you going to do when you go back to your seat? Laura.
I knew it. You're gonna read paragraph 6 and jot about the author's point of view.
Great. Pause. All right, quickly, like 30 seconds, because that actually took me a little longer to model. Anything you want to add to your plan, and then you're going to get a chance to like practice up against a wall.
How come you wouldn't have them jot off point of view after paragraph 4 and paragraph 6?
What?
How come you wouldn't have them make 2 jots, like one at the
What
paragraph
questions
4
I asked myself
and
is so
one?
broad.
We did 4 together, so it wouldn't be a good assessment for me if they were able to do that independently. And 6 is the one that more of them missed, and so that's the one that I want to see if they can apply this skill to. All right, we are gonna jump into practice, and I know you only have a couple minutes, so you have to go and get your class. So you're just gonna pretend you have a VA, and you're gonna start teaching. I'll walk around and do real-time
So you
feedback.
pretend you have a VA?
Yeah.
Pretend.
You don't need to make one right
I was
now.
like, not that kind of time. Great. You wanna teach with me? Okay. So, great.
I'm just gonna
We're gonna grow our brains.
Scott.
We're gonna find my graph.
yes on what's
Friday.
on Wednesday.
Hold those hands, trust
I'm
me.
gonna say
I'm super excited today because
so
today
the hard
we get
work
to
is
practice
done.
the use
I
skills
noticed
and
that there was
concepts.
a gap in the
Could you
Didn't identify the author's point of view.
we only identified one part. How many we identified? Today we're gonna identify multiple parts based off of how they think or feel, but we also know that's their opinion or belief. Their
Things are feeling. Okay, so I'm gonna.
Today we're gonna close that gap. We're gonna
jack up here. I notice that when someone feels something, it's either a positive or a negative feeling. It's either a
live in a cold place.
great. So look up here. We have some positive feelings up here. I'm gonna
have, like,
see
really
that
hard
feels
nice.
really
Let's keep reading.
happy. That's a really bad word, but
Yeah.
nice, really good.
So what's
feeling Valentine's
talking at the
Day?
same
That
time?
made me positive. That made me.
What's
I would
very
love to say
nice.
that nice. It's
Ooh,
not
it's like
that
yours.
doesn't
It's
sound
not
positive
yours.
anymore. They must feel
I
a different
know
way. That
that
sounds negative.
feels really
question I
bad.
understand
Which arises
For
just
just
a
a
few
for, like,
days. It will
what
cause
they're doing
big
when I'm
problems.
That's a negative.
Yeah, when you're modeling, so
feeling.
it's
That's
something to think about.
Then there's this thing
I'm
called
thinking
call
that
to
that's a
action.
negative
I think
I want them to
that
think
the author
about
How many do we have to do
about the
so
what
we
they
have
do
to?
to write
Good.
that
It
down.
shows
keep
action.
reading and see if
Trust
there's
authors.
anywhere else in the paragraph.
I know that
Text.
I need
What
to
the
make
author's
better
thinking.
choices with the foods I
Way,
what's
the
way
other's point?
healthier.
on
Yeah.
how
So
much
today,
fossil fuels we
I'm
burn
gonna
as
show
deliver
soon
that.
as we can.
Well, I'm modeling.
as I
Sounds like they
read
want
about
to
the
do
author's point of
something.
view.
Brian, I'm
As
gonna
we
read,
read,
I'm gonna reread
That
paragraphs
sounds like a
4,
call to
5, and
action. That sounds
6.
like a call
While
to
I'm
action.
doing that, I want you
That's
to
telling
really
And
me
then
think
how
about
does it help
what
us
I do
using
to
it?
I'm gonna
identify
keep reading and see if they say
Great.
anything else.
but like,
It will
Then I
help a
do
lot.
whatever.
Instead, if we
Oh,
learn
Now, and then
I
you're gonna
noticed
call on
that
everyone
there's
to
a
tell
still
you
telling
what
at
they're
the
thinking.
beginning
other
sounds
things to
nice and
stop
cozy.
using
To
fossil
me, that would
fuels.
make me feel
That's a
really
call to
good, especially if I'm
telling
in
me
front
to
of
global
do
warming
something.
may sound nice and
Especially
cozy,
if you live in a
especially if you live in a
cold
cold
place.
I'm
place,
thinking
cold
about
place.
nice
I'm
it's not.
breathing. But nice it's not.
Whoa,
wait a
Wait a second. I just
That
noticed that the
means
author
that's a
made it sound nice and
for
cozy
sure.
and warm,
Nice it's
but
not.
it's not.
Or not.
So that makes me think that the author's feelings are
Such a
bad,
negative feeling. That's
bad feelings.
Great.
So
Let's keep reading. I'm
Good.
gonna keep
And then
that in my
when you have
head.
your
Like,
VA,
don't
right
let
there,
there
you
be
say,
negative
I-
feeling. If the Earth's average
I read
temperature,
that
blah, 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 blah,
section,
it causes
and then
big
it made
problems.
me think what
I
their
know a
opinion
big
might
problem
be.
is
And you can
negative.
just point to this
It's
as
not
your
causing
way
a
of like
solution.
highlighting
That
what
could
he
be
does.
positive.
Just like you
Call
have.
me up to do something.
Team.
Yes.
Okay, let's come back really quickly because I'm gonna get you out of here in 30 seconds. I'm excited to see it in action. I will look at the schedule and email. I think we can either do it tomorrow or do it on Wednesday. And so I'll look and see what makes the most sense. And then whenever we have it, I'm gonna put it in my calendar so I'm there to see it in action. We are literally at 3% mastery, and so when they go back to identify paragraph 6, our goal will be to at least have like 60% mastery in identifying the point of view of
You're going
paragraph
to
6.
jot like on a paper like this. Yes.
Yeah.
Paragraph 6, POV.
Yeah.
Something about a feeling.
Yes. And that'll be the mastery that you put on your data board for the day that we do it, which you'll hear from me tonight on. Sounds good?
Sounds great.
Thank you.
I think we should be able to do it tomorrow. I just worry about their like.
Excited?
Yes, that's the only thing.
You can make it so
I know, and I'm
exciting.
with you. I'm just saying, like that's. I'm not worried about like our schedule. That's. what I'm
Usually did you get my email about how we changed closed reading anyway?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's before lunch.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it tomorrow.
I have a question about Smiley.
Great.
Can I read it to him or no? He's on a step 2.
I think in terms of the reteach, yes, right? Like the reteach is can I identify the character's point of view, not can I read it, but for testing, we can't read it too.
Okay.
Yeah.